There is a detail about Sir Ben Kingsley's preparation for his role as Otto Frank in Anne Frank the Whole Story that has stayed with me ever since I first learned it. In an interview with the United States Holocaust Museum in 2011, Sir Ben revealed that during production, he kept a photograph of Anne Frank in his coat pocket, and before each scene, he would look at it and quietly say, "I'm doing this for you." That detail tells you everything about what this miniseries was trying to be. An active witness that understood, with complete seriousness, the weight of the story it was being entrusted to tell. 25 years ago today, Anne Frank The Whole Story premiered on ABC as a two-part television event directed by Austrian Jewish filmmaker Robert Dornhelm. It received 11 Emmy nominations, most notably winning the Emmy Award for Outstanding Miniseries. It also received a Peabody Award and near-universal critical acclaim. And during the years that followed, it became a staple of Holocaust education in schools across the country. One that a whole generation of teenagers encountered in classrooms, often at roughly the same age Anne Frank was when she began writing the diary, that would eventually be read by tens of millions of people around the world. To understand what makes this miniseries distinctive, you have to understand what it was choosing to be. The most famous screen adaptation of Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl remains filmmaker George Stevens' 1959 film The Diary of Anne Frank, an Academy Award winning work of genuine power that hewed closely to the first person perspective of the diary itself. But the diary ends on August 1st, 1944, 3 days before the Gestapo discovered the Frank family's hiding place. What happened after, the arrest, the deportation to the concentration camps, and ultimately the deaths of Anne and most of her family, exists outside the diary's frame, and Stevens could only gesture towards it. But Dornhelm's miniseries paints a more comprehensive picture. Drawing from Melissa Muller's 1998 Anne Frank the biography, and supplemented by original research and interviews, Anne Frank the Whole Story was conceived as a fuller account than the diary alone could support. It shows us Anne's life before the annex, it follows the family through the annex itself, and then, in its second half, it does what no major screen adaptation had done with the same sustained attention. It follows Anne and her family through what came after the diary ended. This decision was the miniseries' greatest contribution, though it did also lead to a controversy. The Anne Frank Foundation, the foundation established by Otto Frank to steward his daughter's legacy, declined to endorse the production. Their concerns centered on Muller's theory about who betrayed the Frank family to the Gestapo, a theory that does have evidence to support it, but whose subject has never been definitively identified. The Foundation's position was that presenting this theory as historical fact went further than the evidence warranted. Their non endorsement also meant the production could not use any exact lines from the diary itself, a notable constraint for a story so defined by the voice of its central figure. It's a complication that is worth naming, but by no means does it erase what this miniseries achieved. Hannah Taylor Gordon, who has since retired from acting, carries this production on her shoulders with a skill that consistently exceeds what primetime television in 2001 could fully accommodate. Her performance in the first half captures Anne's irrepressible vitality, the intelligence, the humor, the adolescent intensity that made the diary such an extraordinary document of inner life. And then, Taylor Gordon's work in the concentration camp sequences asks the audience to bear witness, with the same unflinching attention she herself brings to every frame. Sir Ben's Otto Frank is equally indispensable. The epilogue, in which Otto, the only surviving member of his family, receives his daughter's diary from Miep Gies, played here by Lily Taylor, is one of the most devastating sequences the miniseries produces. The dedication he brought to the role, photograph in pocket, promise made before each scene, is apparent in every single moment. There were, to some degree, limitations to American television productions of this era, constraints that great films like Schindler's List were not subject to, but what the miniseries gets right far exceeds such limitations. Most notable is the miniseries' refusal to dehumanize anyone, even the perpetrators. The Nazis here are not presented as subhuman monsters, but as human beings who continuously make monstrous choices. A restraint that is both historically more accurate and more impactful than the alternative. Evil that wears a human face is both harder to look at and more important to look at. That Anne Frank the Whole Story is not as specifically remembered today as its initial reception might have predicted is not a reflection of its quality, but a testament to the magnitude of the story it was telling. Any adaptation of Anne Frank's life, however accomplished, ultimately becomes subsumed into the larger cultural memory of the diary itself, and of the 6 million Jewish lives lost in the Holocaust, among them 1.5 million children like Anne Frank, and she became a voice for all of them. The works made in her name eventually become simply part of the ongoing effort to keep that voice audible, and that effort has never been more urgent than it is right now. We live in a time when oppressed minorities are being targeted and taken against their will, when genocides continue to be perpetrated abroad while the world debates the appropriate level of concern, when the lessons that Anne Frank's diary has been teaching us for over 75 years are being tested by circumstances that would have been, to previous generations, unthinkable. The stories we tell about the Holocaust are not mere history lessons, they are warnings. Now more than ever, never again must mean something. Anne Frank, the whole story, is available on DVD and can be found online, and even 25 years later to the day, it is well worth revisiting. If you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to seek it out. And if you'd like, I also encourage you to subscribe to Fandom Frontline for more discussion of the films and stories that shape our culture. More importantly, I've placed links in the description to the donation pages for Never Again Action and Jewish Voice for Peace, organizations dedicated to stopping the genocides that are going on in the world today. Because the most any storyteller can ever hope for is that their diary, their play, their movie, their biography, or their TV miniseries can inspire people to take meaningful action and make the world around them a better place.